Okay, boys and girls, say it with me. The word of the day, the word of the year, the word of possibly the entire damn decade is inflation. The American public is very, very, very concerned about inflation and that it's getting harder and harder to buy the products that they need. Healthcare is unaffordable, housing is unaffordable, food is getting to be questionable, and people do not know how they're going to make enough money in the United States to support themselves and their families, and that's what they're concerned about, right? During the Biden administration, people were screaming about inflation, and do you know what Biden said? Biden said, nah. The economy's fine. The economy's fine. A dead old man could not see the problems in the economy. Probably because he couldn't actually see. So the electorate elects in a new president that comes sweeping into office, and what does he say? I will fix the economy by taxing the ever-loving hell out of the American people and destroying our supply chain system. And when people complain, when people are like, look, 145% tariffs against our major trading partner and the rest of it, how are we going to be able to afford the things we need in life? He says, don't worry. You may not be able to buy 30 dolls for your kids this Christmas, but you'll still be able to buy 2. It reminds me with that GOP congressperson a little while ago. People were complaining about the price of health insurance. And he was like, I don't understand about these people complaining about the health insurance. They can go out and buy iPhones, but they refuse to pay for health insurance. And it's like, well, yes, okay, to be clear, an iPhone's like $1,000. An iPhone is an expensive purchase. But my health insurance is over $500 every month. And I haven't even gotten a yearly checkup in 3 years because it's basically a waste of damn time. Right? I pay $6,000 a year to the healthcare mafia because if I don't pay them for their protection racket, if I have a heart attack or if I have cancer or whatever else, they will be more than happy to sit back and laugh as I die in front of them because I was not willing enough to throw money their way. Right? But anyways, haha! Oh, look at these people. Look at these people buying iPhones. Yes, because the iPhone is far, far, far cheaper than health insurance. I mean, think about this. When my wife had the cancers, so my wife had back-to-back cancers, right? Actually, thank God, actually had really good insurance. Had really good insurance when she had those cancers. And that's going on 15 years ago. Good insurance when she had the cancers. It was still $30,000 out of pocket. $30,000 with good insurance. The reason people have iPhones and they don't have health insurance is because they can afford iPhones. I would just remind you that was a Republican congressman who apparently is so out of touch with how the economy actually works, does not grasp the fact of how expensive health insurance is. Yes, I'm sure for a government employee living off the government dole, they don't realize what things actually cost and then scold the people that actually have to work in the private sector, who have to figure out how to pay for things. Again, it's amazing what Republican Congress people do. Remember when the Republican congressperson actually tried to put a bill through Congress so that for veterans who had received combat injuries, they had gone into combat, they had been injured in combat, and the GOP congressperson literally wanted their current employer to have to pay the insurance and premiums for the injuries sustained in combat. The Republican congressperson wants our people to go into insane wars where we have no plans whatsoever, when our men and women are shredded. He doesn't even want the government to have to pay for those combat injuries. That is a Republican congressperson. I'll just put it on the table. I'll just put that on the table. But anyways, yeah, we got the Trump now. We got the Trump. You can see this. Associated Press. Again, this is the real world. This is why you're going to lose your job. This is why the economy is going to go to hell. Because the business person, the art of the deal guy, doesn't actually seem to understand how the economy works, right? Trump says U.S. kids may get, quote, $2 instead of 30, but China will suffer more in a trade war. And again, I do want you to think about this a little bit. Isn't that good that China will suffer? I'm going to ask you as an American. What is the value to you of China suffering? Why is China suffering somehow put out as an actual value proposition? Hey, your kids, might not do as well, but that's okay because we're gonna punish the crap out of China. Again, we talk about the senile old losers in office, and this is the kind of insanity that we get. But if we go down, it's interesting. Quote, somebody said, the shelves are going to be open, Trump continued, offering a hypothetical. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, so maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. His remarks followed a defensive morning after the Commerce Department reported that the U.S. economy shrank at an annual rate of 0.3% during the first quarter. Again, Trump's economy is already shrinking. The senile old losers' failing policies are already shrinking our economy before the real effects are even hitting us, right? And the interesting thing, and again, this is what I find insane about our political and our oligarch class, is this whole idea of, well, your kids might not get $30, but they'll still get $2, and they only cost a couple of dollars more. Well, here's the thing. If the dolls only cost a couple of dollars more, why wouldn't you buy 15? First of all. The second one is that weird red herring thing, that weird dog whistle. Oh, well, your kids are going to get $30. How many kids get $30 for Christmas? That actually seems a little weird. Do you give your kids $30? That's kind of bizarre. But even if we're going to take it on the face of it, even if we're actually going to take it on the face of it, for this businessman president, think about this. As I've talked about before with our economy, right? Every product that you purchase, every service that you consume, right? There are people that provide that product or service. There are truck drivers, there are warehouse workers, there are retail employees, there's gas stations, all kinds of stuff, right? We've already talked about that, right? With the West Coast ports, year over year, shipping into the West Coast ports are already down by 40%. 700,000 truckloads down from where it was last year. 700,000 truckloads of product have not come into the country. That's 700,000 truckloads that will not be delivered by truckers, 700,000 truckloads that will not be unpacked by warehouse workers, 700,000 truckloads that will not go into retail to be sold, the whole 9 yards. Right? It's not simply 40% down. It's 700,000 truckloads and then, right, the ramifications of 700,000 truckloads. Right? So, if you go by the insane premise of Trump that our kids are not going to get $30 this Christmas, they'll only get $2, what I want you to think about there is what the hell is that? That's like a 95, 97% drop in dolls going through this process. So that's $28 that will not be unloaded from a ship. That is $28 that will not be put into to trucks and taken to warehouses. That's $28 that will not be stored in the warehouses. That's $28 that will not be delivered to retail stores. That's $28 that retail employees will not be able to sell to you. And then at scale, because I say $28, and you're like, who the hell cares, Eli? Eli, why is Eli complaining about $28? 28 G.I. Joes, who the hell cares? But think about it at scale. Think about how many kids there are in the United States. Multiply by, let's just say, they're all going to get 28 less dolls, right? Let's go with the ridiculous insanity of the senile old losers' logic. They're all going to get 28 less dolls. How many kids do we have in the United States? How many millions of kids do we have in the United States that will all get 28 less dolls? Ergo, 28 times millions, times all of the human input that goes in to actually getting those dolls to the kids. All of that economic activity is going to disappear. I don't give two craps whether your kid gets $2 or $30. What I do care about, though, is warehouse workers and truck drivers and the rest of it. Again, people that Trump does not give a damn about. But anyways, this is what you get. This is what you get when you have a senile old loser as president of the United States that is more interested in people bending the knee and kissing his ass and pretending that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread than actually doing the damn job. You know what I'd like? What I'd like? I would like transparency in our medical system. When my wife goes for another cancer treatment, I would like a bill that makes sense. I'm not even saying I want an affordable bill. Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. Our politicians will never give us an affordable healthcare system. I would just actually like to see the itemized bill where I can see where we paid $200 for one goddamn Advil. Can we have one president? All I'm saying, the president just comes in, is like, you know what? My job for the next 4 years is simply to bring transparency to the medical system, so so that we can simply understand how insane our medical system is, and then try to do something. But no, they're all doing whatever. The important thing is that we're punishing China. I mean, the thing you have to realize at the end of the day, right? When you get laid off from your job, when you lose your house, when your kid has to sell their bunghole out behind the 7-Eleven just so you all can get fed, the one thing that you can hold dear to your heart is at least the Chinaman was punished for some reason. Anyways, how y'all doing? Oh, Jesus, this is just the worst time. This is just the stupidest timeline. This is just the stupidest timeline. How did we go from the last president to this president? Oh, Lordy. So anyways, if you don't know, or as you may or may not know, I'm known as Eli the Computer Guy. My current project is something called silicondojo.com. What if high quality technology education was simply as accessible as water? If you go to silicondojo.com, we have self-study classes, we have Python, we have SQL, we have Bottle, Web App Framework. Currently working on the introduction to programming. Should be done by the end of the week. End of the week is tomorrow. Ooh, got some work to do. Anyway, so those are just self-study classes. You can just simply go there and learn. Because hey, guess what? It doesn't cost a lot of money to create and provide education. I'm just going to put it out there. Creating and providing education actually is pretty resource light. There is no reason you should be spending $100,000 for a college degree. But anyways, I do that. We do one-on-one, so every Monday between 1 to 5, I talk with people about their tech stacks and their careers. And we also do community sessions, Zoom sessions. We've been doing a lot of interviews and guests lately. We had a CEO for a managed service provider up in the Yukon. We had him a couple weeks ago. We had a head of business development for an ISP here in Asheville. We had them last week. And next week, we are going to have the CEO of a development company. And basically the idea is to bring these people in to explain how the technology world actually works so you can hear it from other people. Eli, you're just arrogant. You just are saying your opinions based off of talking to all the people you do. So I'm bringing other people, and you can hear from them. You can hear from them what their opinions are. So anyways, the important thing to talk about today is Satya Nadella, saying 30% of Microsoft's code is written by AI. Yay! This is so good. This is so good for the Gen Zers. This is an amazing time for the Gen Zers. Congratulations, Gen Zers. This is another reason to cry. This is another reason to cry. Because that's what people like to do nowadays. They like to cry. They don't really like to build anything. Have you noticed that? It's really weird. Everybody else needs to do something. What they need to do is... It's like, that's a great idea. That is an awesome idea. So why don't you do it? No, Eli, they need to do it. They need to do it. It's like, well, I might be slightly dumb. I might be very arrogant. But one of the things that I have learned in life is you can never expect them to do what the hell you think that they should do. Again, we don't even have transparent bills in the United States for our healthcare system. Again, like, think about it. Like you get into this whole like affordability of the healthcare system. That's a big boulder. That is a big boulder to put. I'll admit it. We should get there. We should fucking get there. But I get that that's a hard boulder to push. But just the fact that we don't have transparency in our healthcare system. You know, I would just think that the government, should be able to give us transparency in our healthcare system. But anyways. We don't have that. And that's the thing. When you talk about what they should do, they're not going to do it. They're going to do whatever the hell they want to do. So a big thing to be thinking about for the young folks out there is, what can you do? What can you build? The United States and the world is desperate for solutions. How can you help somebody today? I want you to think about this. How can you get a thank you today? When was the last time somebody genuinely offered you a thank you because you did something for them that was genuinely thoughtful and valuable? Think about that. Think about how many people go through the day in the modern world and they don't even get a thank you. Not because other people are being rude, but because they don't do a damn thing for anybody else. And then think about that. If you can't even get a thank you from people, if you're not doing enough to get a thank you from people, how are you going to do enough to get $1 from a person, or $10, or $100, or $1,000, or $10,000? What can you do? What can you do to help somebody else out? Anyways, something to ponder. But yeah, so here's another reason for people to complain. I find this funny because everybody's worried about AI right now. AI. Everybody's crying over AI. Oh my God, the tears, they're just pouring down, Everybody's crying. And I find this funny because, again, I'm an old school tech person. Again, started in the Army in '96, got in the corporate world in 2000, had my consulting company, grew it to employees, had 9 employees, wound up being a YouTuber, wound up now doing whatever the hell it is that I'm doing. Anyways, been doing tech. Next year's 2026, which means I've been in the tech world for almost 30 years. And here's the thing. I'm not soldering green and brown boxes anymore. I'm not repairing NT4 systems anymore. I'm not dealing with Kodacom configurations for DVR or SwitchVox or any of that. I'm not dealing with 66 blocks or 110 blocks anymore. I'm not doing all these different things. Not even coding in PHP. I like me some PHP. Not even coding in PHP anymore, right? Because my career has moved on. And I think that's an important thing to be thinking about, again, especially for the young folks out there. Are you a computer flipper? I used to call people computer flippers back when I was young in my 20s, right? I came up with it when I was talking to my mother, back before I disowned my mom, and then she died horribly. Anyways, we're talking about like computers and all that jobs. And I was talking about like computer flippers. and how basically so many people in the tech industry, like they know their one thing. They got their A+, or they got their CCNA, or even they got their MCSE back in the day, but that is all they knew. They weren't technology professionals. They were not chefs, right? They were chefs. And the thing is with a chef goes into work, and 1 minute they're doing, they're working for one place, and they do Italian. And they go to another place, and then they're doing seafood. And they're going to another place, and then they're doing steak. They are a chef, right? Their current job is cooking pasta. Their next job might be doing seafood. The job after that might be doing steaks, right? But that is their career. The chef is a career. My job is this. What I have done over my entire career is all of these different things, right? You cook based off of what the hell people want to eat, right? A burger flipper is somebody who goes in and they cook and they make the food for as long as that's a job, and then when that job is over, they move on to the next thing. Maybe they go into construction, or maybe they go into computers, or maybe they go into floral arrangements, right? They're doing this job now because it's paying them, but they're not really a professional in that field. This is not really part of their career, right? Whereas a chef will go and do a whole bunch of different things. And again, I think that's a big thing to be thinking about if you actually want to be a technology professional. Again, how many of you actually want to be a technology professional? One of you probably. I will put $5, however many people are watching this video, one actually wants to be a technology professional. I think most of you want the pay that you think goes along with this job. I think you want the respect. Respect, that's so cute. Aw, you think there's respect? Fuck, you're dumb. Anyways, the respect you think you get with this job, right? You want all this stuff you think that comes with a job. You don't actually want the job itself, nor do you actually want the career, right? And that's a big thing to be thinking about, right? Because again, I look at this like when they talk about AI and how AI is changing everything. Oh, wow, you mean everything's changing again? Wow, just like yesterday, right? Again, when I started, if you needed support in order to fix problems, again, with NT4, back with the IT world. Again, my buddy had something called a TechNet subscription. Cost $450 a year. They literally sent you CDs. It wasn't even online. You have an index CD. You put the index CD into your computer. You would type your query. It would tell you what CD to then insert into the computer to give you the white pages or whatever else. Literally, when I started in 2000, we had books and we had CDs. Again, the internet, yes, don't get me wrong, the internet did exist, but it was not great for things like troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff, right? That's how it started. And then we got Google, and then we got Experts Exchange and Stack Overflow and all that kind of stuff, right? It allowed supporting systems to be a lot easier. We have more and more open source projects. Again, copy paste. When I started, you had to copy and paste your own code. You could copy and paste any code that you had written. And then as we went along, then we created systems so we could copy and paste other codes. And now we have things like GitHub. And now we have all these open source projects out there. Oh, you need a module for Python? Don't worry, you don't have to write it. You can simply pip install, and you install a module. Whether it's FFmpeg or whether it's AI stuff or whether it's whatever, you just install the module and away you go. All right, again, frameworks, again, React and all that kind of stuff, right? Those had to get built. You go back 15 years ago, frameworks were not as big a deal. Right? So all of these things have come along and dramatically changed our industry and dramatically changed the jobs that we do to provide valuable services and solutions to the end user. And so now AI is coming along. And guess what? It's going to change things. It is changing things. Whoopee crap. Everything is changing. The sky is falling. Just like the sky was falling yesterday. Just like the sky was falling the day before. Just like the sky was falling the day before that. The one thing to understand when you're going to be a tech professional is the sky is always falling. And what I find fascinating with all the young people I'm talking about, oh my God, the heartache. Oh, do you mean you're going to have to learn something more than the goddamn Java stack? No! But you learned the Java stack 10 years ago. That is not a career. That's a job. That is a skill set. That is a skill set. Now you're going to have to move along. right? I know somebody who works for one of the companies, a pretty prominent developer for the company, and they were talking about being an AI composer, a coding composer. Which actually, that doesn't sound too bad. That does not actually sound like a stupid thing. And the idea is basically, you know how you be a team lead? So normally you think about being a team lead for a team of coders. Well, now you're basically going to be a team lead for a team of AI agents. And it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Right? So you tell the thing that's good with front end stuff what it's supposed to do, and you tell the thing that's good with back end stuff what it's supposed to do, and you tell something what else it's supposed to do, and then you tie all that kind of stuff together. Right? It's a different job. It's a different job, but it's just simply part of your career. Right? Things change. Things move on. Suck it up, put on your big person pants, and learn how to go with the flow. Or find a different career. That's how it is. That's how it is. Again, I've told you folks on the bloodbath of the old PBX administrators. Remember when PBX administrators used to make $100,000, $200,000 a year? Woo! They knew digital and analog telephone systems. Guess what? Nobody gives a crap anymore. I have 100 hours in training just in telephone systems that nobody gives a damn about anymore. That's how it goes. But anyways, so we got this whole AI thing going on right now. And what I want you folks to be considering is, again, what is the next step in the world of technology? Again, doing my videos and all that. It's been a while now. 10 years ago, probably over 10 years ago, right? I used to recommend everybody get the MCSE. MCSE was probably the best, more solid way to get into the IT world, right? You're going to get your MCSE as your certification, and you're good to start out. The MCSE is gone now. Like, even the MCSE is gone. It's an entirely different world. Again, Active Directory and domains and all that kind of stuff. It's an entirely different world. Now it's all infrastructure as a service and orchestration. Orchestration is the big deal, right? Things change. Things move on. I had friends in the 90s, again, in the 90s, as teenagers, making over $100,000 a year, assembling computers, right? They're not going to do that anymore because things moved on, right? That's how it goes. So we talk about this AI and stuff, and things are just moving on. So figure out your place within the new paradigm. Anyways, so Nadella is coming out. I'm basically saying 30% of Microsoft code is written by AI. From CNBC. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella on Tuesday said as much as 30% of the company's code is now written by artificial intelligence. Quote, I'd say maybe 20%, 30% of the code that is inside our repos today, and some of our projects are probably all written by software, Nadella said during a conversation before a live audience with Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. The pair of CEOs were speaking at Meta's inaugural LlamaCon AI developer event in Menlo Park, California. Nadella added that the amount of code being written by AI at Microsoft is going up steadily. Nadella asked Zuckerberg how much of Meta's code was coming from AI. Zuckerberg said he didn't know the exact figure off the top of his head, but he said Meta is building an AI model that can in turn build future versions of the company's own Llama family of AI models. Quote, our bet is sort of that in the next year probably, maybe half the development is going to be done by AI as opposed to people, and then that will just kind of increase from there, Zuckerberg said. So the big thing now is even now, the idea is that Microsoft, 30% of their code is being written by AI, and companies like Meta, again, a significant amount of their code is being written by AI. I'll have you think about two things when you hear this, though. Again, understand what is being said and why things are being said, especially in the technology world. One of the big issues that the technology companies have right now is, again, technology in many ways has plateaued. The technology industry has plateaued, and we're going into an economic disaster. I think we're going well past our kerfuffle, and we're going to an economic disaster. So one of the big things that they have to do is they have to convince investors that the investors should still invest in their companies. Why should I buy stock in Microsoft? Why should I buy stock in and Facebook, right? You know, I don't care about Windows anymore. Windows is decades old news. I don't really care about Azure anymore. That was cool 10 years ago, not so sexy nowadays, right? Isn't Microsoft yesterday's company? OpenAI is today's tech company. Microsoft is yesterday's tech company. So one of the big things is with this whole AI push for all of these tech companies is that they're trying to prove that they're still relevant, right? AI is the fancy, cool, sexy tech of now. So basically by coming out and saying that they're so in bed with AI, what they're trying to say is that they're still a young whippersnapper companies. So with a lot of this stuff, you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? There's a lot of these words get put out, and like that's the weird thing. Like everybody takes, like when Sam Altman comes out and says some stupid ass shit, right? Like all code is going to be done by AI in a year and a half, right? That's dumb. That's dumb. That's dumb. Anyways. But it's weird because people are like, well, Sam Altman's like so smart. Of course he knows what he's talking about. It's like, yeah, and Sam Altman is also CEO of a $100 billion company whose only value is in AI. So, again, I mean, like, listen to him. Listen to the optimism. Listen to his arguments. But also, like, couch those arguments a little bit with he has a vested interest in you believing AI is as valuable as he says it is. Which, again, there's a hell of a question mark there. The other thing to be thinking about, again, when Microsoft comes out, it says 20%, 30% of their code is currently being done with AI. Again, there is an interesting question there of what exactly does that mean? How important is that code? Is it basically simply, finishing, what is that? When it finishes your thing for you. Basically, is it some kind of autocomplete feature, right? You're going through, you're creating your loops, you're creating your if-else statements, you're creating your functions. Is AI just supporting high quality, high efficiency autocomplete functionality for you? So you still have to know exactly what's going on. So you sit there and you're like, okay, I know what this function is going to do. I'm going to start writing this function. And then as you write that function, it starts completing code blocks for you, right? Or is it telling you how to write the function itself? Or is it recommending what function to create to do whatever it is that you want to do? I think a lot of that kind of stuff is things that you have to be thinking about, because with that, there then becomes the question of where is the value proposition with being a coder, right? So if it's completing all the code, right? So if you just tell it what you want, and then it just completes all the code, like in Cursor or something like that, then one of the arguments is, then you should think about going into project management. Then you should think about going into management. Then you think you should go into product management, that type of thing. Much higher level. Like doing the code at all is going to be the less valuable skill set, and you want to be up in that management position. Essentially, the AI becomes your employee. On the other hand, if it's just autocomplete, very complicated, very fancy autocomplete, the argument could be made that you still want to be a coder, you still want to be a technology professional, because you have to understand what you want the systems to do, right? Like I'm actually deciding to create this function. I get help with this function being created, but I'm the one that decided to create the function and know what the inputs and the outputs of the function should be. Again, like somebody like with me, I don't like JavaScript. JavaScript, I don't know, I just get dyslexic about JavaScript. So if I'm going to do something with front end, right? So I know the back end. I know what I want to do with the front end. I know what JavaScript does. I know JavaScript's vulnerabilities. I know all this stuff about JavaScript. I just fucking forget the syntax every once in a while. So is it somebody like me sitting down going, I know exactly what I want to do with JavaScript and why? I just where did the commas go type of deal, and then have AI create that for me, and I can audit it, verify that the code does what it's supposed to do with all the appropriate commas and semicolons and that type of deal. So is it a technology professional basically guiding the AI, or is it somebody that doesn't even really understand what JavaScript is? Is it somebody that says, I need a form that validates information and does all this kind of stuff, and then they just get code blocks that come out of it? Here's your JS, here's your HTML, here's your CSS. you don't know the difference between JS and JavaScript and CSS, right? I think that's one of those things to kind of consider with this. And think about, like, again, how they're actually using the AI from a functional standpoint. Because that's the big thing to be thinking about for you and your career is that it's all a bet. Again, the important thing to understand right now is it's all a bet, right? There are computer assembly companies here in the United States that are going to go bankrupt. Not really much for any particular problem of their own, right? But because we have a senile old loser in office that doesn't understand how the modern manufacturing process works, and therefore, again, there's a gamer's nexus. I don't know, documentary, I suppose you could call it. Go watch that. And he goes and he talks to the companies that assemble computers, right? So they really didn't do anything wrong. They were working by the system that was in place until like a month ago. Basically, Trump has entirely changed the game board because he's playing 5D chess that doesn't exist. He is playing a game that literally does not exist. And they're going to get stuck, right? Again, 145% tariffs on the stuff coming out of China. You think about assembling computers, again, very expensive components. Again, the motherboards are expensive, right? The CPUs are expensive, the RAM's expensive, the drives are expensive, the cases are pretty expensive, and so they get a nice profit out of it, but they don't necessarily get a good profit margin, right? So if they sell a computer to you for $1,000 and they earn $200 for selling it to you, right? That's a 20% profit margin, right? Well, the thing is, that means the parts, the components for that computer is like $800. Well, I'll take out labor and all that. Let's say the parts for the computer is like $600. Well, if you put 145% tariff on $600, that's now $1,500 just for the parts. And then you have to put labor, so that's put another $100 on top of that or something like that. Then it gets you to like $1,600, $1,700. So the computer they used to sell you for $1,000 now costs them $1,700 to create. And then when they go to sell it, again, let's say for $1,900, let's say, so their profit margin goes down. Their margin goes down, but they keep the same level of profit. They just want that $200 profit. They're now trying to sell computers for $1,900 when they used to be $1,000. And so they're now going to sell fewer of those computers, right? So think about this, right? This isn't, they did not overhire. They did not underhire. They did not screw around with rules or regulations or anything like that. They didn't buy a yacht when they should have invested in warehouse space or something, right? That's business failure, right? They were doing their business. They had a successful, viable business that employed hundreds of employees, right? Trump administration comes in, decides to do whatever the hell the senile old loser is deciding to do. All of a sudden, their entire business goes sideways, right? I want you to understand that, right? That is the reality of the tech industry, right? That's the reality of it, right? Again, .com boom, I was doing good. I was doing so good, I flew off to Europe because I figured I'd come back and go for the whole CTO thing. I flew off to Europe and the .com bubble burst behind me, right? Again, I had 9 employees, everything was going great, all the way up into the Great Recession, and the domino clobbered me, right? The thing is, the outside macro forces that can just crush you, the fact of the matter is not only can you not stop them, but many times you don't even see that they're coming. And so the important thing to understand is when you're thinking about your career and you're thinking about your job and all that kind of stuff, is that it's always a gamble. It's always a gamble. It's always a bet. This idea, right, when you hear people saying, but I did everything right, why am I being punished? Right? You're not being punished. The world zigged when you zagged, right? The thing that you thought was going to be valuable is no longer valuable. That's not punishment. That's not punishment. That's just how the world works sometimes. And so one of the things you need to be thinking about is, again, when you look at the world of technology, you have to be placing the most educated bets you can place, right? When you look at this, and when you look at a world of AI, and when you look at a world of 145% tariffs, and you look at a world of the degrading globalization, when you look at that world, what positions and what tasks do you think will remain viable in 2026, 2027 that may not be viable now? That's one of the reasons why I recommend for a lot of my students to think about the MBA or the Juris Doctor, right? Because we're always going to need business people, right? The AI, whether it's an AI or whether it's a slave or whether it's a high-paid tech employee, right? The product that they output is always going to have to get sold, right? Business development. Biz dev is actually one of the most important things in the tech world, and very few people even want to talk about it. Again, your business will live and die based off of client acquisition cost. You can either figure out client acquisition cost or your company can die. That's basically all there is to it. And again, that's one of the things that I recommend, like even with tech people, is think about going and getting your MBA with a specialization in finance, something that's difficult. Why? Because that is a type of skill set that will still be needed even if all the coding jobs are taken over by the AI. Again, what are the legal ramifications of all this code and everything? That is going to still need to be figured out by the lawyers, whether it's being developed by AI or whether it's being developed by human beings. Right? And that's the thing to be considering then, like when you're sitting here and you're looking at this, what do you think the skills are going to be? So again, one of the videos that I want to do, I'll do it in a little bit, is this whole question of what type of infrastructure or architecture should be designed in a vibe coding world. So I was curious. So I've been talking with people about the whole vibe coding thing, about how amazing vibe coding is. And when I talked about security, basically one of the people was like, oh yeah, all the security is fine. And one of the reasons all the security is fine for what they're creating is whatever vibe coding product they're using uses Supabase for the database. So basically when you use them to vibe code, they've already coded into their prompts specific products that will be used. And so with Supabase, Supabase is I guess it's a framework for using Postgres, essentially. And so you use Postgres, relational database engine. But then this is like a front end, and it adds security functionality, makes security a lot easier, does a lot of this stuff, right? So when you vibe code with this particular product, it sets up all the database and everything within Supabase, and then because it's Supabase, it's able to specifically add all the standard security stuff that needs to get put in so that you actually have a relatively secure app at the end of it. Right, so an interesting question then becomes, is like when you look at your architecture style, do you know how to design architecture for a vibe coding world? Again, it was interesting. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this, and he was talking about the whole idea that microservices architecture seems much more relevant than monolithic architecture for designing applications. So basically, monolithic is where you create the app, and within the app, everything is in the app, right? So the login system is within the app, the security system is within the app, the file storage system, the database system, all that kind of stuff is within the app you create. It's monolithic, right? It's one big block. So the idea is that with microservices, right, you create services in your infrastructure or whatever for authentication. You create services for file storage and that type of thing. You create database services. So any service that your code might, any functionality that your code might need, you have a microservice that will provide that functionality. Therefore, when you vibe code, the code that the AI is creating doesn't have to basically recreate a user account system. It doesn't have to recreate a file system. It doesn't have to recreate a database system. You can say, this is the authentication system that we use, and this is the parameters that it requires. Add that into the code. This is the database system that we use. This is the stuff that it requires. Add that into the code, right? Well, the funny part is, again, sitting there, I was like, well, that actually makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, but who's going to be responsible for those microservices? That's what I always love about coders. Coders are like, yeah, architecture. Somebody else can deal with the architecture. Yeah, but who's gonna build the microservices for the database systems? Who's gonna build the microservices for the user account systems? Who's gonna build the microservices for all this other stuff? Right? And so that's one of the things to be thinking about, again, in this AI type environments, actually learning how to design microservices and design them in such a way that they support things like vibe coding, or in this AI world. Again, that's something that might be incredibly valuable. And so I think these are some of the things like to consider as you consider the next step in your career, right? So the value of your JavaScript skill set is decreasing, right? That's fine. That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. That's how the tech world goes. So then the question is then what do you do next to get on the next upswing for where the value proposition will be? I think that's a big thing to be considering. And then also with all of this, to realize that the timeline is not as dire as these jackasses say. Again, that's why you're hearing so much now. Again, like Sam Altman, he just came out, it was like a year and a half or some horse shit, right? One of the things you have to be thinking about is not only is there the technology, so whether or not the technology can actually do it. So there's a whole bunch of questions about whether the technology can do what they say it does. Let's just put that to the side. Here's the thing to think about. Let's say Sam Altman is 100% right that within the next year and a half, you could literally tell AI to create a new version of Linux, and it could. Let's just say it is that good. Let's just say that. Let's just put that on the table. One of the things you have to think about, though, is that there's workflows that are involved for creating anything, for creating products. Again, there's planning processes, there's documentation processes, there's the whole project management system. Again, once everything has been created, who's going to maintain the system and update the system and the whole 9 yards. So one of the big things to consider is even if AI, highly doubt that it is, even if AI can do what they say it's going to do within the next year and a half, for companies to fully integrate that into their workflows and into basically how they produce their products or services is going to take a lot longer. It's kind of like when you look at autonomous cars, right? So we've got autonomous cars, we got Waymo, right? But Waymo only works in a certain number of cities, right? So Waymo is in like Phoenix, and it's in Atlanta, and I think it might be in like San Francisco. It's in a few cities. It's not all over the country yet. So even though the technology theoretically works, supposedly autonomous driving works, right? It's actually on roads. It's actually doing what the hell it's supposed to do, as far as we've been told. Even then, it takes longer to deploy that solution at scale than simply even specifically solving the problem. And so one of the things to consider, again, if you've got a company like Microsoft even, and again, Microsoft, a real high-tech company that's been doing this stuff for 50 years, right? Even with them, as they hand over more work to the AI, there's going to have to be a lot more, there's going to have to be a lot of processes and thinking about how do you manage those projects. What happens when the AI just simply refuses to give you the results that you need? How do you audit? How do you verify? Again, do you reduce the number of coders by 90%, but then increase the number of people that can audit code by 100%? Right? So basically, okay, we need to fire 9 of these people and hire 3 of these people. Well, then you got to figure which 9 of these people are you going to fire. You got to figure out the process for firing them, the whole 9 yards. Then you got to figure out the process for hiring the other people. You have to do this within a system because you still have to ship product to the customer. So you have to do this in a way that doesn't break everything that you're creating. And that kind of thing takes, a lot longer than you expect. It's kind of curious, like with virtualization, right? Virtualization has been around forever, right? I actually won a thin client. There's something called thin clients. Anyways, I won a thin client back in 2002, I think it was. I went to this conference, put my thing for a raffle, I get a thin client. It was 2002 virtualization, right? Virtualization worked, virtualization was stable, the whole 9 yards. They had thin clients, blah, blah, blah. Man, it was another 10 years. Really, it was about another 10 years before virtualization was really mainstream, right? And that's just virtualization. Again, one of the things that's interesting with a lot of these technologies is, the technology comes out and the technology is rock solid stable. Again, think about things like QR codes, at least here in the United States. I don't know about those foreigners, but QR codes, right? QR codes have been around forever. I'd heard people talking about the amazing, uses of QR codes and all that kind of stuff. I'd argued about QR codes, the whole 9 yards. Anyways, QR codes, right? Again, what that is? It's a fucking barcode. It's a 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional barcode or whatever. Who cares? All right, pretty simple, makes sense. Not a lot of argument here. But think about it. QR codes came out whenever the hell they came out. But here in the United States, QR codes did not get widely deployed until COVID. Right? Until everybody wanted touchless menus and that type of thing. When everyone went touchless, that's when people started using QR codes, at least here in the United States. Right? And so QR codes are a non-controversial technology. Nobody's getting too worked up about QR codes one way or the other, right? Anyways, but it's good, it's solid, it does what it does, blase, blase, blase. In the United States, it was basically just rotting for about a decade at least. COVID happens, that was the impetus for everybody to start using QR codes. Now everybody uses QR codes, nobody thinks twice about it, right? The important thing I just want you to be thinking about with that though, is just, again, a technology literally as non-inflammatory as QR codes still can basically rot for a decade before people get around to actually using the damn things. So again, when we're thinking about things like AI, even if AI is, as effective as they say it will be in a year and a half, the full process to implement that into people's systems is going to take a long, long time. And so that gives you the runway to start modifying your career and planning for, the bet that you're going to take from 5 years from now. As I always argue, I've argued for a long time. If you are still doing your job the way you basically did your job 5 years ago, you're already failing. Again, if you're in the technology world, the way you do things should be evolving year by year. Every year, you should be changing things to maybe a 10% or a 20% degree. Again, maybe it's a new IDE this year, maybe it's using a little bit of AI next year, maybe it's doing something else the next year, but it should always be evolving. If you sit down in 2025 and you're basically more or less doing exactly what you did in 2020, that's far more of a problem than AI is. So anyways, that would be my argument. So yeah, Microsoft is apparently creating 30% of their code with AI. Anyways, their code was so bad before, will anybody notice? Here's a question for everybody. Yeah, so Microsoft's crappy ass, holy as hell, whatever, weak as hell from a security standpoint code that was being done by humans before. Now AI is doing it. Would anybody even know if there's a problem? I don't know, that's an interesting question. But anyways, there's some things to think about. What do you think about AI? Are you using AI for everything? Are you an AI fan person? Put your thoughts down below. And with that, that's about all I got to say. And anyways, yeah, the economy's going to get bad. The economy's going to get so bad. Oh, can we get a vaccine for Trump? Again, that's all we had to, with COVID was a disaster. But the idea was, as soon as we get the COVID vaccine, then we can go back to normal life. Again, that was a lie. That was horse crap. But it gave us something to hope for. Is there a Trump vaccine? Because I have no idea what the win looks like. Again, I think that's my frustration. Like, people are like, oh, TDS. I don't even know what the win looks like. Like seriously, as an American, what would China have to do to get back to 20% tariffs? To get back to 20% tariffs, what would China have to do? As an American, I can say I honestly do not know. Again, what is our win? It seems like the only win is to punish China. If we're punishing China, we're winning, regardless of what it does to our own damn economy. But anyways, gotta place your bets. Place your bets and figure out where your future is. Anyways, see y'all later.